Jack of all trades, master of none. I saw Meteor's video about the guide submissions, and I decided, might as well make a guide for one of the most overlooked characters in this game. Of course, there's a reason for him to be overlooked. He is absolute dog shit. But I main him nonetheless. So, this is going to be a detailed HR guide for those of you who are actually insane enough to play this character, let alone main him. Now, what I said earlier about HR being Jack of all trades and master of none, I actually meant it. What I'm trying to say with that is that essentially what you have here with HR is that he is capable of doing anything. He can do absolutely anything. He can buff, he can DPS, he can debuff, and he is shit at everything that he does. He is bad at everything. But he can do everything. He can boss decently and he can clear decently. Which, by extension, means that he is good. Well, not really good. He is decent in every single situation. Which, unlike certain classes that are good in only, let's say, 2 situations, he is good in every single possible situation. Not good, decent. But still, you get what I mean. Now, let's start with one of his most, let's say, complex systems. So, we have the Ruler of the Abyss and the Seed of Chaos systems. So, let's begin with the Ruler of the Abyss. Well, it's pretty straightforward. Essentially, if you use any special active skill, you essentially get a point. The maximum amount of points you can have is 3 points. If I use a special active, I gain a point. I use another special active, and I gain another point. And I use a third one, and I gain a third point. Now, the reasoning behind these points is for you to gain more skill damage on specific skills. When you have 3 points, when you have used 3 special active skills, you are going to gain the Ruler of the Abyss boost on your next special active skill you use. Normally, that would be this thing. But for an just as an example, let's do this. Not awakened. This is the damage from this skill. I think it's called Interfnim, but it doesn't matter. So, this is the damage with a Seed of Chaos. Without one, let's do a quick comparison. Not awakened again. Yeah, you lose a lot of damage if you don't if you don't use the Seed of Chaos to its full advantage. Sorry, the Ruler of the Abyss. So this boosts your DPS by a lot, but this is what makes HR so MP hungry, or mana hungry as some people like to call him. Essentially, in order for you to gain that, you have to spam a lot of special actives non-stop, which results in a lot of potions being consumed. So playing him is gonna fucking run you a lot. Let's just say that. He's extremely expensive to maintain because of all the potions you have to give him. But I think it's still worth it to play him. Now, let's take a look at his skills. We're going to examine each and every single skill, see what it does, and see which ones are worth using and which ones are not. So, let's begin. Let's start with the base, Ein. Why not? So, this used to be good before, now it is no longer good. Essentially, you are invincible while in this, but it's in early game. It could be useful in secret dungeons, but to essentially glitch some bosses, you know, kind of get an easy kill on those bosses. But it doesn't work in late game. Next thing, you have explosion, and this is not used, not even in PvP anymore. It's a multi-hit skill. Actually, I might as well show every single one. Invincible while in this. Essentially iframes. Iframes the skill. Next one. Explosion. Completely useless. Although it targets your enemy, it is still not at all useful, considering its damage is absolutely abysmal, and it's not really all that versatile, plus you are absolutely useless while casting it. This is used in very specific dungeons to bypass specific stages. One example I can show you would be Solace's Fortress and Trosh's Nest. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you those examples because I don't want to edit videos. I just don't want to do that. But just you'll figure it out. Now, this is his freezing skill, which is part of every single Ain's loadout, which is used in Trosh's Nest to freeze. But it's also worth using if you are weaker and you want to support your teammates, which I would recommend if you are weaker. So, next skill. You have this thing. This is the European server. Everything is in Latin. I don't know the German names for that one, but it's not the original name. So, this skill is mostly never used for a reason. It's an explosion and it silences. Now, if we were to take a look at the damage it does, it's pretty mediocre. It doesn't do anything at all. It's bad. You should not use it. It's bad at clearing, and I would not recommend using it under any circumstances, not even the modded version. And the modded version is also bad. But for this, just to show you what I mean, let's just use it. Essentially, it just doesn't have the ring anymore, and it's just 3 explosions. Although it does increase its damage, it is not at all versatile in any way. Now, next skill. This is his escape skill. Let's disregard that. Now, Sacrosanct, straightforward. It's pretty straightforward. Damage, rains from the sky. That's about it. Next. This skill is extremely important for HR. It essentially makes you bigger, and your normal attacks ignore the defenses of your opponents by 100%. We don't care about the actual defense part, we care about the size increase. And I'll actually explain later on in this guide why we care so much about the size increase. And let's just disregard all of these skills for a moment and focus on this skill. This is his biggest weapon. This is his most powerful. This is the reason this class is even at all playable. This makes this entire character playable. So I'm gonna focus a lot on that. Essentially, this skill ties into the Seed of Chaos system. Essentially what it does is that upon reaching a certain number of seeds, if you collect, let's take a look. If you collect a certain amount of seeds, you are going to acquire a specific buff depending on how many seeds you have. So, you should never use this thing if you have under 80 seeds. You only use it when you have 80 seeds. And the buffs are absolutely insane. You have all attack boost. All physical and magical attack are increased by 30%. Just a raw 30% damage increase. And the critical damage is also increased by 10%. This is extremely powerful. It is extremely powerful. This increases his damage by a lot, especially when you stack it with one of his later skills, which is his level 95 Transcendence skill. Upon using this, HR is going to get a 10% attack boost for every enemy he hits. This means that you can gain a potentially 50% damage boost just from this, and when you stack this with his level 15 active skill, you are increasing your overall damage by 80%, which is already a lot, but it's nothing compared to when you, let's say, are in raid and you have an Aether Sage, an Oz, a Fatal Phantom, and all of the, and let's say you pop a Battle Elixir, his potential for damage is increased by a lot. But keep in mind, even with that, he is still unable to keep up with some of the main DPS characters in this game. He can barely keep up with them, even with all these tools. So do keep that in mind. Now, let's move on to his other skills. This could, well, I use it for mostly small bosses because it's great against small bosses. Let's reset. Does 75 million to a dummy, to a boss dummy. But trust me on this one, it's great for clearing, and it's also great against small bosses like Rosso and 12-7. The unmodded version I would never recommend you use, because it's just not worth it. It's supposedly, I mean, in theory it's supposed to be better for clearing, but in reality it's not even close. Just don't. It's a bad idea. Well, you can use it in, earlier dungeons to clear things, but clear stages, but don't use it late game, it's useless. You will not even damage the mobs. This is another important skill that we have to discuss. His level 25 active. His level 25 active is essentially an armor break. And this is his debuff, essentially. So his main debuff skill, so to speak, is armor reduction. It's not that great compared to, Night Emperor's armor break, but it still reduces defenses by 35%, which is not bad. And this is exactly how you're going to start seeing the picture come together in a way. This is his debuff skill, and it's not good, it's not great, it's okay. Next, we're going to take a look at his level 30 special active skills. This is just pretty straightforward. Single hit. Maybe I should make this just a little brighter so that you guys can kind of see the actual skills and the ranges better. But let's see again. Okay, so it has a pretty good reach, and if you are extremely geared and extremely powerful, you can probably deal a lot of damage with it and use it for clearing. But I would not recommend it, as there are just better options out there, and it's only really good in very specific situations. Next up, you have Reflection. Reflection is, well, it's a really good clear skill, although it is made kind of bad because of its damage. Its damage is kind of low, and it's good for early clearing, but late game, you really have to have really nice gear to take full advantage of it. The modded version is just, no. Now, his main DPS skill is his level 35 Transcendence skill. Enterfnen. This is, my pronunciation aside, you can use this to deal a ton of damage. This is his main DPS skill, and this is the skill you are going to stack on either your Elrionode gear or Rigmore gear. You do not stack anything else, nor no double skill stacking on HR. No, it's just bad. Stack full Entefnen and nothing else. If you want to be really creative, you can stack his other level 35 Transcendent skill, Bravery skill, but it's going to be pretty situational. You will be focusing on clearing at that point, and his other level 35 Bravery skill is already good enough. You don't need to stack anything else. Now, the skill itself, pretty straightforward. Basically deals a bunch of damage over time, not that quick, on a specific area. Now, you can use this for clearing because it does affect it's not a small area that it affects, so you can technically spawn on a couple of mobs, move on to the next stage, and just clear it that way. But this is primarily your most powerful skill. It's your main DPS skill, no matter what happens. Next skill is his second most powerful skill, and that is the other bravery. I'm sorry, in Europe we call them transcendent skills. But his second bravery skill is the scythe hit. Now, the scythe skill, because I don't know its actual name, because I didn't memorize them because they're in Germany. But anyway, it's extremely great. It's amazing for clearing. Now, the reason you use the modded version is because it's a single hit. And it has a wide range. Hits around you, hits above you, hits right next to you. So, you can probably see its wide range. We can go even farther. And we still hit it. What if we're completely out of view? Nope. What if we're just in view? Yeah, so if the mob is in view, you're probably gonna hit it. That's about it. And the damage is also very, very nice. Specifically, around 5,000% damage. You wanna choose the attack power attribute for it. And, I forgot. Let's go over the attributes. Doesn't matter what you choose here, but for this one, I would consider going with the MP consumption one, because you want to make sure that this consumes as the least MP as possible, because it's basically just a skill for versatility. This, you want to go with the attack range. For the level 15s, you want to go, specifically for his most powerful skill on level 15, the active one, you want to make sure you extend its effects. You want to have it active for 10 seconds instead of 7. That would help you increase your damage by a lot. For his level 20 skills, you want to increase the damage on the bravery skill, because it does a bunch of damage. And then you want to also reduce the MP consumption for this one, because you want to make sure you have as much MP as possible. You don't want to be wasting too much MP on this. Even if you extend the effect, the actual MP consumption is better, because if you extend the effect, this means it will be active for longer and you won't have the need to reactivate it. And if the more you reactivate it, the better, because you gain more Ruler of the Abyss orbs for more damage. For this, you want to go, for the level 25 skills, you want to go for the attack and cooldown reduction for the debuff skill. You want to debuff as much as possible, and technically you can have this up and running non-stop because of its low cooldown. For reflection, really doesn't matter. I wouldn't just go with the defense ignore attribute, because it doesn't really matter which one you go for. You won't really use that skill late game anyway. For the other level 30 special active, you wanna go with the MP consumption. If you use it rarely, and whenever you use it, you want to make sure you're not wasting too much MP on it. Plus, it could also be used for stacking potentially in the future. So far, there are better stacking skills, but we never know what's going to happen in the future. The attributes you want to go for you want to get for your big DPS skills is going to be heavy on all of them. Now let's go through his buffs here. This is his buff. He buffs himself with this, only himself. It increases the chances of you proccing your attribute. This is used mostly in PvP for Darkness 4 shenanigans, where you can stack the debuff from this, the 12/7 weapon accessory, the where was it? The Solace title for resistance reduction, and Darkness 4, and this. Essentially, probability of activation of all resistances plus 100% and all resistances plus 150. Essentially increases your chance of proccing Darkness by a lot, and when you stack it with all of this, you're not gonna... You don't give your opponent any MP. Now, this is HR's reboot skill. It is just absolute dog shit. Do not, under any circumstances, use this skill. There are only there is only one dungeon where you should be using this, and this is Gaia Master Road, and this is only because this thing knocks Gaia down. You want to make sure you're using his level 40 skill there, and nowhere else do you want to even consider going near this skill. It is absolutely horrible. It is absolute dog shit. I don't even need to show you what it does. It is shit. Trust me on this one. Trust me. Now, you have his level 45 skills. His first level 45 skill is used for PvP mostly. Essentially, it links your opponent to you, you steal his MP and HP, and you slow him down. Useless for PvE, useless in PvP as well. Would not recommend to use it at all. It could be interesting, you can try and use it, but it's overall pretty bad because the range of it is pretty small, and what are the chances it's going to be winning you any games, even in PvP? Now, you have his other level 45 skill, which is extremely powerful and versatile. It's great for clearing, which, let me show you. It has a wide range. It has decent damage. Specifically, it does around, I don't know the exact number, but it does around 10,000% damage, which is on its own very impressive. And it's, let's say, one of the skills that you want to be using if everything is on cooldown. For example, if you use your boost for, let's say, you have your boost, your battle potion active, your buffs active, and your seed active, your ruler of the abyss seeds active. Well, if you've used your most powerful DPS skills and they're all on cooldown, you can use this instead, and it's really nice damage, even though it's a strength skill, and it's also very versatile for clearing, because you can just spawn this in an area that has a couple of mobs and they're gone. Now, we have Vacuum, as it's called in Europe, but the name is probably different in other servers. But his first level 50 active skill. It's bad. It's like a smaller version of a grunt. Essentially, just spawns a little eye, and the mod just makes the eye a homing eye, so it seeks out your opponent. But we don't really use that. It's only used in PvP to trace your opponent, so that you can kind of surprise them out of nowhere, and you could kind of jinx it by spawning it against walls. I can show you if you'd like. Let me show you. This is PvP. This is a PvP trick. Although I don't really play PvP that much, but technically it's not that discreet. But people can overlook it in the heat of the moment, and if they get close to it, either it's gonna go straight for them and it's going to explode in their face, getting you a free catch, which HR doesn't have a lot of. Next we have Upgrunt. Now, Upgrunt is a great clearing skill. Essentially, it seeks out your opponents, and it's a homing, just like Reflection. But it does a lot more damage than Reflection. This used to be HR's previous most powerful DPS skill. It is now no longer that. Its range has been greatly reduced, and its damage has also been greatly reduced. But it's still an extremely powerful clear skill. Next, the stacking skills. His level 55 special active skill is a skill that you use for stacking. I love it very much because essentially it's very quick, extremely quick. Gets you an orb, Ruler of the Abyss orb, gets you seeds, and it's not that costly MP-wise. I would definitely recommend it. Next up, we have let's see, his hyperactive. Well, not at all useful, I would say. Just deals damage in the area. You can probably glitch it in Hanyer for some additional damage, but wouldn't really recommend it. Let's take a look at his other stacking skill. Now, this skill is favored by a lot of HR players out there, but I'm not really a fan of it because it's kind of slower and it's only good in specific circumstances. So essentially you dash a certain amount. You dash and you get the seeds and you get the orbs. Now, HRs use this because it costs almost nothing, because if you don't hit your target, you recover some of the MP you used. So it makes it a very MP efficient skill to use if you want to stack. But I don't like it because it misplaces you. Technically that could be good in some dungeons, but at most it just doesn't. It's not that convenient. Next skill. This is just the opposite of the Mad Paradox teleporting skill. Instead of using a skill to teleport your opponent to you, you can use it to teleport yourself to your opponent. There we go. Let's plant it, and then we can just go back. People in PvP are sometimes surprised to see this, so just keep that in mind. Now, this is a PvP skill, nothing else. Now, let's quickly get rid of this and take a look at the next skill. Okay. We have Abyss Field, I think it's called, in the other servers. Essentially, deals damage in a wide range. The range is very nice. Where is it exactly? Yeah, that's the sweet spot. The range is very nice and it's great for clearing, because you can basically cast it, deals damage, you run away, and you clear the rest of the stage. I would say it's very important, use it, it's great. Also, makes your opponent bleed if you're in PvP and if you actually care about that. Would recommend. Now, this. As I said, second most important skill. So far, we only have one mob available, so we only get one. But, what's wrong here? You can stack this, but you cannot stack it if you're not awakened. So you want to awaken, and then you will notice we have this. Unfettered power. Increased attack. Now, you can stack this if you use it multiple times on a single enemy. Or you can stack multiples of this if you spawn multiple enemies. So, you can skip the stacking part if you just have 5 mobs around you. You can just go ahead and use it, and that is your 50% damage increase easy. There you go. Procced full. And then you have his hyperactive. Useless, I would say. Not, again, deals damage around him, and it's very slow. I would say it's useful in PvP, but what hyper isn't useful in PvP? So do not use in PvE, or if you want to flex, because it's kind of cool, you may. Let's take a look at his passives, however. Shattered Belief, or Seed of Chaos, I'd say. Now, this has a lot of information on it, but to just break it down, helps you gain seeds, and helps you stack better. That's about it. Also manages your awakening pretty well. Gives you a longer awakening. Now, this. Epiphany. You complete your travels through the chaos and recognize your true power. Kinda cringe, but increases max MP. This is what gives you the 400 MP, and then you also have some combo attacks while in Hanier mode, which I don't know how often you're going to be using them. You don't really use them in PvP or PvE at all, but still nice to have them, I guess. Better than nothing. You have the New Belief passive and his Ruler of the Void passive, which is essentially the orbs. Also increases your attack speed. Pretty nice, I'd say. Now, New Belief. This is a very important passive. It reduces your MP consumption and cooldowns, and it kind of helps HR's gameplay style, which is skill spamming to oblivion. Next thing we have his level 70 passive, which is, I'd say, not that important. It increases your the rate at which you can actually stack seeds, but other than that, it is pretty basic. It helps stacking, but it's not really something you have to know about. It just supports your gameplay. Generic level 80 Transcendence boost. Then you have Reconstruction, which you can go ahead and read this for yourself. There's not that much info on this, but I'm trying to make this guide detailed, so to speak. Now, here you have Spell Circle of Chaos. This, essentially what it does is that it's another one of your buff skills. Now, if you use a special active skill while awakened, you're going to proc this field. And what this field does is that for a very short duration, it boosts, as you can see, let's just do it again, increases critical damage. Now, this also works for your allies as well. Reduces resistances, and ally crit damage by 10% and yours by 15. Overall, pretty good, but make sure you just stay close to your allies whenever you use it if you're in raid. Improved drain, cooldown speed plus 100%. Beautiful. This, again, helps HR's gameplay style a lot, which is spam skills into oblivion. MP regeneration, 5 per opponent in the vicinity. Tries to kind of mitigate HR's absolutely ridiculous MP cost for basically just playing. Now, this is just about all of the information that you're going to need for HR skills and actives. Now, I'm going to be giving you the gameplay strategies that you should be using when playing HR. This is probably the most important part of this guide, because a lot of HR players, especially new ones, have no idea how a lot of his skills function, how they're supposed to play him, and they just get way too confused by him. They don't deal any damage, and then they just let the class go, class change, or make another character and play something else. And I have to say, he is extremely weak. HR is weak. This class is weak, but he can keep up with some of the better characters pretty well if you know what you're doing, and that's a huge hurdle you have to get over. You have to know what you're doing with this character. You cannot just go into a dungeon, press some buttons, and you're done. No, you have to know what you are doing at all times. So, let me give you an example. When you get into a dungeon, you immediately want to start stacking. Now, let me just get rid of my ruler orbs and seeds. Now, you start the dungeon with 0. The moment you enter the dungeon, you want to start stacking using special actives, clearing the stage. At the beginning, it's not that important to stack these, but over time, you are going to have to start stacking them. So, you start using as many special actives as you can until you hit 80 seeds. Once you hit 80 seeds, you would want to immediately use them, or, depending on what part of the dungeon you are on, save them for the boss, or which I would not recommend, or just use them for the next stage for just quicker clearing on the upgrunt. Now, something important about this character is that the order in which you use your skills is extremely important. So, in a dungeon, what you want to normally do is, let's say if you're clearing, you would want to use this so that you get your buff from all the mobs around. Then you would want to kill them with this if they're still alive. This usually happens in late game and not so much in early game, because this would be enough to clear anything in early game. But this guide is going to be focused mostly on late game gameplay. So this buffs, if you're really geared, could kill. So let's say these mobs here are in the beginning of the dungeon. You want to use this, next stage, next place, clear, immediately while it's still active, upgrunt, clear, go. This is the strategy you would want to implement when clearing. So the clearing is decent. Bossing is also decent. When you're fighting the boss, usually, so that you can deal damage faster, you would want to do this. You would want to have more than 80 seeds. And if you're bossing, you want to use the 80 seeds. And for your first skill and for your Ruler of the Abyss buff and passive, you want to do the following. Release DPS skill, and immediately, because your biggest DPS skill releases damage over time, it's not a single hit or releases too fast, you want to buff yourself right after you cast it. Let's do this again. And then immediately use your buff. This lets you deal damage faster, so that you can continue your string of DPS skills like that. You just use this, you stack more Ruler of the Abyss, and then you use this. And right after that, you can continue casting special actives, stacking, and then the more special actives you use, the more seeds you gain, and you want to make sure you're using your Ruler of the Abyss orbs for your biggest DPS skills like this one. This is what you want to be doing. So, this is the strategy. Always make sure you have your buffs active. Never miss the buffs. Keep them active. Do not, under any circumstances, use these skills for anything but stacking. I mean, the lighter ones. So you want to make sure that the order in which you use your skills is proper. Always make sure you have this active. You have to have this active. And specifically for its attribute, you want to extend the effects. You don't care about the damage of this skill, even though the damage is nice. You care about maintaining the singular buff active all the time, no matter the circumstances. Every other skill's attribute is pretty self-evident. For this, you want to increase the damage, because the range, because it's good for clearing. For the level 80, doesn't matter. And for this, MP consumption, because it's used for stacking. For level 70, doesn't matter. Now, we've gone over pretty much everything there is to know about this character. Kind of. Just know, also he's really tanky and good for PvP, and specifically in 2v2 because of his skills, because they gather and they have a wide range. But I would just want to add some personal notes here. Do you really want to play this character? I have to say that the reason I main this character, the reason I main HR, is because he is extremely fun to play with. Other characters, not so much. His Seed mechanic and his Ruler of the Abyss Void mechanic make him fun. It gives you an element of difficulty that cannot be found in every character. He is extremely difficult to play because there are so many things you have to be watching while playing with him. You have to watch your seed count, your Ruler of the Abyss orbs. You have to make sure you have this buff active all the time so that you actually deal decent damage. You want to make sure you always have your seed buff active as well. And that's not even half of it. Certain stacking methods that people use when playing HR are using these special active skills to stack, you know, quicker in a way. Skills like this, they would use multiple stacking skills. I use only 2 skills for stacking, for main stacking. This is the level 20 second special active and the level 55 special active skill. But some people use more skills for stacking, which leaves them with less skills to use for clearing and bossing overall. I would recommend you only have a maximum 3 stacking skills for the seeds and the Ruler of the Abyss orbs. But then again, you can also, I would not recommend you have more than that because I think that that's just enough. I stick to 2, but uh, just keep in mind there are so many things you have to watch in this character in order for you to be able to actually do something with him. In addition to all of that, you are going to be weaker than almost every single character in this game, even if you are extremely geared. HR also requires extremely high ERP to be effective. You can have the best gear in the game, but if your ERP is low, like mine is, especially for HR, your performance isn't going to be all that optimal. Let me show you. You want to make sure that you spam as many skills as possible, and for that you want to stack the cooldown. Well, you need 100 points in cooldown, but what about all the other skills that you have to take care of? You have the all skill damage, you have the polarization, you have the boss damage, and you also have to stack everything else. Now, I am going to be working on my ERP to get it higher, but keep in mind, my performance, even with my gear, is not that great compared to other characters with that same gear. Even though I know how to properly play HR, it is still extremely difficult to keep up with them with the ERP. And keep in mind, you also have to be extremely well geared in order for you to be able to do anything in any dungeon with him. So you need extremely high and powerful gear and extremely high ERP. But is it worth it? For some people, it is not. For me, it is. But that doesn't mean it's going to be worth it for everyone. The entire idea behind HR for me is that he is fun. He is fun to play. That's it. And I think he is worth playing. Definitely. He is worth maining. But you need so many things, so much dedication to get him to function properly. And even with the gear that I am using, you are still, or well, I am still barely keeping up with the people who are plus 11. It's extremely hard to keep up with the better characters and Elsword when you're playing this character. So you need the high ERP and the overpowered gear. And just so you know, this is what I am using, and I am barely keeping up with the plus 11 characters. Like, for example, plus 11 Novas, plus 11 Shaktis. Our performance in Raid is about the same. So do keep that in mind. If you are, let's say, plus 11, you're going to be as useful as a plus 10 with HR. That's just the way it is. And although he recently received a new buff in the KR version of the game, and soon it will be coming to the NA version of the game, even with that, he is not going to be great. What's going to happen, or what has happened, more like at the moment, is that his performance in KR and soon in NA has been improved. His performance as a character has been improved, and he will be able to deal more damage quicker. Well, not really more damage, he's going to be able to deal damage quicker, but it's just not enough to make him good like other characters are, for example, Night Emperor. So these were my thoughts on HR, and this is kind of my HR guide. I'm not sure how good it was because I'm not really used to making guides. I just... Look, there's no help out there if you're in HR. There is no help out there if you're in HR, so I just want to help however I can, so hopefully this has helped some poor HR who's stuck in a shitty situation thinking of, oh, god damn it, how am I gonna... This character is shit. Yeah, he is, let's be honest. But hopefully this helped. Now, this is the HR guide, and I guess if someone has made it this far, well, thanks for watching, bro. Cheers.